on, folks. Nice. While I'm waiting for people to come in, I just want to do a little bit of optimization, see if I can get things running a little bit better, because they've been so slow lately. Fusion is just like I have this one open and it's super laggy, and I don't know why. We're gonna start a new design anyways. And I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'm gonna save this. I don't know how to spell disk. Is it with a K or is it with a C? I don't know. I feel like there's like both options. So I guess for anybody who's watching this after the fact, today I'm going to start working on a couple other projects, maybe just one, maybe two. I'm not done my last video at all, but I have deadlines for a couple others, so I'm going to start those now and work on 2 to 3 videos simultaneously. I've never done that before, so we're going to try that. This is going to be a good push for me to really figure out how to manage my time and everything like that, but I want to have some concepts figured out. Now I just got to make sure I think I need to do some graphics optimization. So I think I could go to help, support, and diagnostics. Let's do all this together, because I don't really understand how graphics diagnostics. Check the box for limit effects. I literally don't see. I don't know. I don't understand any of this. Limit. I literally don't see that. I don't see the limit option in settings, but literally everything is laggy, and I don't remember it being this laggy before. I wonder if I have to like clear cache or something. I've never done that with Fusion, so maybe that's what I have to do. Spiral, it's been hitting Mac users recently, particularly after the if the limit effects checkbox is missing, it's often because Fusion has already detected a graphics bottleneck and simplified the menu, or you're running in the new intent-driven workspace modes, part versus assembly, which rearrange the UI. Yes, that's the difference. Since everything is lagging regardless of the file, try these nuclear fixes. Okay, let's try this. I want to try, so like, literally like, you can see the box in the corner. That is so laggy. What is going on with this? Let's turn on the origin. Oh my god, like it's so laggy that look at that. Look how laggy this is. That is not smooth. So let's see if the clock icon does anything. Let's see if working offline is better. Oh. Oh my god, that's so much better. Okay, working offline is so much better. So it's just my internet sucks, which is fine. Oh, flies. Oh my god, it flew into my mouth. Oh, sorry, buddy. That sucked. Oh, that sucked for everyone. I almost swallowed it. Okay. So, once again, yeah, nobody's on here yet, so I can feel free to do this right now. This is kind of like a bit of it. Like, I don't really cut these out of the streams after the fact because I'm lazy, but also No, that's actually the only reason. Um, so sorry if you're watching this after the fact. Skip to maybe when I start doing things if you want to. But I think this could be useful for people too, because like sometimes I just feel like everything's working against me, and like lagginess is a big deal. Like this is a pretty new computer. I mean, it's not that. I guess it's like 4 years old, which is kind of ancient in computer terms, but it's still really powerful. It does everything really good. It's just Fusion is always so slow. So since you can't stay offline forever, you'll eventually need to save to the cloud or update. Here's how to silence that background noise so you can work online smoothly. These are the biggest culprits for background stuttering. Go to Preferences. Oh, this guy, I think. Preferences. Navigate to Data Collection and Use. Uncheck everything. Apply. Fusion will no longer pause workflow to send usage packets. Purge the web services cache. Sometimes a Handshake file that manages your login becomes bloated, which I feel like might be the case because it hasn't been this laggy in the past. In Finder, press Command-Shift-G and paste this. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to do this off of screen. Command-Shift-G and paste this. Okay, find the logic state XML. Move it to the trash. Relaunch Fusion and log back in. This forces a clean. Okay. Okay, so it's good I didn't really do anything yet. Don't save. Ba 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 ba. Optimize the automatic save interval. If you're working on complex instrument designs with deep timelines, the auto save can cause a 5-second freeze every few minutes. I'm not really experiencing that too much. In preferences, so yeah, I'm going to skip that one. Disable live review and notifications. God, Fusion is slow. Holy cow. Force quit. Oh, you couldn't even see how laggy it was because I didn't have it open. Sorry. It was laggy. And now it's a little better. Yeah, this is I run into this kind of stuff like every single day, it feels like. People that watch my videos are, they're like, whoa, that's like so much stuff. You put so much effort into it. And I do. I put a lot of effort into my projects, but a lot of the effort is just like dumb headaches like this. And I feel like I could eventually really start to figure out all of these things that are, just like bottlenecks. And hopefully one day I can get to a point where things go really fast. I don't have to deal with this kind of stuff. I mean, it's always going to happen. It's always going to be a thing. I think this is part of just the process and trying to do everything myself. I have to figure all this stuff out on my own. It's a love-hate relationship with being independent. Okay. Okay. So, let's see. This is working better. Are we in online mode? No. So if I go online, this is working better. I don't know if you can hear the birds right now, but it sounds like they're fake, but they're so real. There's so many birds right now. Okay. It's working good now, so I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna go for it. So, I'm trying to deliberate. I've been really struggling with ideation, coming up with video ideas. I'm torn between just sort of following what, with this whole 3D printed instruments thing. It's not even so much 3D printed instruments. Like, I'm just using 3D printing as like a conduit to understand, because with 3D printing, it takes a lot of the sort of legwork out of building more traditionally. And I think I'll be moving into more traditional builds and that kind of thing later on. But I think 3D printing is just like a really, it sort of distills it down into design and fundamental understanding, and then the printer does all the building essentially. And that's kind of what I like right now, while I'm sort of figuring out these fundamental concepts about frequencies and how music works. And I like that. And so for the next few videos, it's definitely going to be focused on 3D printing, but I'm certainly not opposed to building more traditional ways. And I'm starting to include other things like this next video, the siren video. I'm using a motor, which obviously isn't 3D printed and stuff like that. So it's not like we're going to. God, I'm still thinking about that fly that flew into my mouth, because he was sitting on my table and I tried to move him out of the way, and he just let me move him, which is not fly-like. But then eventually he did fly away, and I thought, okay, that was weird. And they flew right into my mouth. That was crazy. I think he just wanted to be with me. So anyways, there's a couple concepts I'm fiddling with. A big key to the YouTube career. So obviously a YouTube career is what I'm aiming for. I don't know if I've talked about this publicly, but I've done quite a bit. I've worked quite a few different jobs. I've worked jobs that are like construction related, so very hands-on. Didn't mind that stuff, but definitely gets really boring when you're doing the same thing every day. And there's physical aspects to it that I don't like. And so that's one thing. I've worked office jobs, which are purely mental, and I go mental when I'm working an office job, especially if it's like customer related, which is like the main office job I had. And it was great. Awesome job for so many people. I highly recommend it if you can handle it. But it really sucks the creativity out of my soul, so I couldn't handle it. I've worked retail, which is honestly kind of nice. I kind of like retail. That type of customer relationship is fine for me. Because any issues, it's usually a problem with the product and not me particularly. Whereas with the office job I have, I won't go into too much detail, but it was like I had to solve every problem and it sucked. So retail's fine, but obviously no real career in retail. It's not something. It sort of inspired me to get into product development, I guess. But it's just like, retail's really for. It's like a kind of a starting job kind of thing. And of course, just again, not a lot of creative outlets there. And then I toured as a musician, which was definitely my favorite job. Good balance of pay and like doing fun things and like getting to experience things and being around people, like-minded people. So I loved touring, but I have a family. I don't have any kids yet, but that's definitely the goal. And touring really sucks for that. It's probably the worst thing I could do if I want to have a sustainable home life. So, and then the other thing with touring too is it's just like it's a grind. you're on the entire time you're there. Obviously, it's fun, but there's very little downtime. And the reality is, like, I don't think I wish I could do this. I wish I could have a job and just be really happy with it. Like, I envy people that love their jobs. Like, I've got a buddy, and I always bring him up because he's a concrete worker. And concrete's like not a job that people like. It's super hard on your body. It's messy, really stressful for lots of reasons. But man, he loves it. He just loves it. And every day he wakes up, I mean, I don't know. I don't know this much detail, but all I know is he loves it, and he's happy to do that until he retires. And I envy that so hard. I envy the idea that you can have something that is so stable, because like concrete's like for life. AI can't replace a concrete worker. That's nice. Stability is nice, and I love the idea of stability, but the reality is I don't think I'm built for that. I just need to be exploring stuff, and explorers are, you know, if you were an explorer back in the day, you weren't even sure if you were going to come back from your expeditions. Obviously, I'm exploring in a more like conceptual way, so it's not really dangerous at all for me, which I like because I'm not a huge risk taker when it comes to my life. I take risks when it comes to like my career, I guess. But so for me, YouTube is kind of the obvious choice. It gives me the flexibility to follow my questions. It gives me the opportunity to explore things that I feel like need to be explored. And that's why I need to make this work. I need to be I need to be able to turn this into a career. So and we're close. I think we're really close. The channel's doing quite well, and people are really excited about the stuff. So what I'm getting at is, even with YouTube, even with something so open-ended and free, and like there's people doing random stuff on YouTube that you would never think would do well, and then all of a sudden they're doing amazing stuff. Even with YouTube, there's certain bottlenecks and certain things that you kind of need to weigh. And for me, it's this idea that the things I'm really interested in, the niche, the hyper niche topics that I tend to be interested in, aren't the most generally exciting things. And so there's like two types of YouTubers, I think. It's a full spectrum. But there's YouTubers that prioritize spectacle and prioritize things that are ideally going to be mass appeal, general audience type of stuff. And then there's the YouTubers that are definitely more like either on the arts side or on the just personal exploration side, that tend to, you know, if they're lucky, they can find something that fits both, fits a general audience and kind of suits what their needs are. I'm kind of in between. Like, I obviously want spectacle. I want to do things that people think are cool. But at the same time, like, I'm not gonna do videos about stuff that's just like dumb for the sake of views. And like I think a lot of YouTube is like that. But at the same time, I need to figure out why these certain things are, why these questions that I have are questions that I need to pursue. And I need to figure out how to convince other people that these are cool questions to have. Um, it's like a supply and demand thing. Like I think I have the supply, but I need to create the demand because the things that I'm trying to figure out don't seem to be the most, uh, we're not talking about basic life, general audience questions. We're digging deep, going into the weeds, and finding things that are really niche. And I need to figure out how to convince people that have never thought about this stuff to start thinking about this stuff. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I think there's this whole idea between marketing and art, right? Like, marketing and art tend to be opposite. Like, marketing seems to be like the antithesis of art for some reason. But at the end of the day, like, art is supposed to connect with people. You can be an artist on your own and just do what you need to do. And there's value in that, but it is more of a personal value, and I fully respect that. And there's a lot of things that I do that I just need to do on my own, and I don't need to share it with people. But if the goal is to try and share things and make a career out of it, you have to understand what the value is. And you have to kind of pick topics that are going to expand people's minds. And I don't think, like, marketing isn't always a bad thing, because I think that's a really good skill to have, to be able to convince people that what you're doing is important. And I believe what I'm doing is important to an extent. I'm not really sure why yet. I just kind of feel that way. And obviously it's not important like life-saving stuff, or even like life improvement stuff. It's important in the sense that I think as a society we're getting a little lost here, folks. Things are changing so fast every single day, and we are constantly dealing with like things like AI and things like algorithms and everything like that. And I think it's really important to stick to something to expand your mind, and to always think about, and like the ironic thing is, like, AI is a direct result of people doing exactly what I'm saying. So it's kind of like a to a certain extent sort of thing. Like there's always going to be a point where things get too much. Anyways, I'm rambling. All I'm saying is I'm trying to work on a couple videos where the views are important. The views are always important to me, because the more views I get, the more money I can get, which allows me to focus more on this. But it also means the more opportunities to spread the ideas and to potentially open doors to be part of other things, collaborate and that kind of thing. So views have always been important. However, these next two videos, there's an extra financial financially, views, more additional views is really important. So it's kind of key for me to make sure that I can make a video that is gonna do well. Because if I can, then this whole YouTube career thing becomes really real, and all of a sudden this could be a life-changing thing. So I need to be very deliberate. Now, I want to focus on the music stuff, the physics of music. I want to focus on trying to understand music better, allow other people to understand music better, and show people that there's still a lot in music that is untouched or underexplored. And at least that's how I feel. With tools that are making music way easier to make music easier. It's really easy to think that there's not much exploration left to do. And I feel like that's so wrong. I think there's so much to explore still, and like we should be. Music is one of those things where it's not just a technology thing. Like a lot of things, obviously, like cars, for example. It's hard to really look back at old cars and be like, there's a lot to learn from this. Obviously, there is, because cars were simpler, and there's a lot that can be extrapolated from simpler designs and that kind of thing. But you know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to say like a Model T is better than a current car from today. Versus music, where we're still listening to. We're literally still listening to music that wasn't even recorded when it was written. It had to be, the only reason we know what it is because it was written down on paper. Music is one of those things where technology makes it easier to make, but it doesn't necessarily improve it at all. And so that's why I kind of like going back in time, or at least going back to the fundamentals and figuring out what those things actually mean. And we'll see. So I've got two ideas in mind right now. I'm not sure I'm sold on them yet, and it is entirely dependent on how well I can package these ideas. So what that means is how well I can make this video. I'm not concerned about how well I can make the video. It's how well I can sell the video with a thumbnail, a title, and an intro. And I haven't been thinking about that so much with my previous videos. It's always just sort of been an exploration. And then I think about this stuff after the fact, and I'm always panicking. I'm always really struggling, and I think I've failed a lot. I think I failed a lot at selling the ideas with the packaging. So trying to think of that stuff first. And so the two ideas that I'm brainstorming for these next couple videos are revisiting the tiny kick drum. So if you haven't seen it, I attempted to build the world's smallest 3D printed kick drum. It was technically the world's smallest kick drum. It just happened to be 3D printed, and I failed super hard at it. I learned a lot, but I think I approached it all wrong, and that video didn't do well. And I'm not surprised, because there was nothing there value-wise other than like just like learning things, and then also seeing me fail I think is valuable. But I want to succeed at this. So I have a whole new approach that I want to try. There were a million comments on that video that really helped me figure out what the best direction to go is. And I think I know what I'm going to do. And so I want to sort of model it up today, more so that I can start testing the fundamental concept while also seeing the visual of it, because I see it in my head. It looks really cool. I think it would be a great thumbnail, but I'm not sure. Second idea, aside from the little kick drum, microtonal music is a big deal right now, which I love. I think that's so cool. And our instruments generally aren't built for microtonal, specifically the keyboard, like the piano keyboard. They haven't changed and in a long time. And they've always had the same layout, and any keyboard you buy now is going to have the same layout, except for a few exceptions that are designed specifically for microtonal music. But once you get into that thing, there's this one, I forget what it's called, but it's a microtonal keyboard, and it literally has, like, it feels like hundreds of keys. And it seems impractical, really hard to learn, really hard to figure out. So I wanted to design a modular keyboard where each key is its own little module, and they snap together with magnets, and then you can assemble a different keyboard layout. And I think I'm going to start with that one, because this one I literally don't even know how it'll work yet. But I just need to kind of like figure it out and get the idea down first, and then I'll see if it works. So what I'm going to do, what is the standard dimension for a piano key white? Well, standard white piano keys are roughly 23.5 millimeters, or 7 inches wide. The visible length of a white key is typically around 15 centimeters. Okay, so 23.5 millimeters by 150 millimeters. Let's just go with that. So 150, 23.5. Okay, that's a white key. And then the black key, (9 to 10 millimeters and 9 centimeters. Let's go with 10. Okay, so these are our two keys. So pianos are interesting because, well, they're interesting for a ton of reasons, but when I'm thinking about a modular keyboard, basically I want to have white keys and black keys. And I want you to be able to assemble them in a way where, like, you can have white keys right beside each other, or here, let me actually show you. And like, everybody knows what a piano keyboard looks like, but I don't think a lot of people have like thought about it enough to really understand what I'm saying without looking at it. So we've all seen a piano keyboard. It's laid out in this interesting way where you've got white keys and they're all touching, and then the black keys sit in between, right? So you've got your C note. This is a C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And then you've got C, C sharp, or D flat, D, D sharp, or E flat, and so on. Now you'll notice all the white keys are directly beside each other, but the black keys sit in between. And so in this case, the white key actually has to be cut out to fit that black key there. And you'll notice it's not even symmetrical, which I've always found interesting. And I think it's just due to sort of how the mechanism works on the inside of the piano. So if I wanted to make modules where I want there to be two modules only. I want you to have a white key module and a black key module. But you can't put a black key, like the white key module I want to be literally just a solid block, and the black key module I want to be also a solid block. And, you know, you could just cut the white keys off here. You could just cut the white keys off here and then just have the black keys start here. And that is one way we could do it. However, a lot of pianists like to play the white notes here, right? You're not always playing the white notes at the front end. You want to be able to play them back here a bit and back here. and back here. So I don't want to cut all this out. Ideally, the white key will be this whole shape so that if you want white keys beside each other, they sit right beside each other just like this. But then you can still put a black key in between. And the only way you can do that with this modular approach, I think, is if you have it so the black key actually floats above. And I think we can do that. This might be like hard to understand, but let me just visualize this here. So let's say our white key is like this, and we can extrude this like 20 mils. Sure. So that's a solid block. You can play this along here. And then let's extrude this guy maybe like 5 mils. And so with this setup, and then we would have to move this up a bit. So with this setup, theoretically, you could have these white keys. I should make it 24, yeah. You could have these white keys directly beside each other. And then the black key can sit like there-ish. Right? So you get the sort of overlapping thing, but this black key can still be pressed down, and it's actually going to be floating above. And then you can still play these keys up here. This is the plan. This is the plan. And then I want them to be connected via magnets that have magnets that like the little brass pin type magnets, so it conducts when you connect them. Now, obviously, the issue is going to be the mechanism. I can't just have this black key cantilevering out like this with like a hinge on this side, because this is just going to be way too weak. I need to have the support all the way down to the front, because you want to be able to really play this thing. So I think what's going to happen is there's obviously going to be a gap between these two, right? Because, there's a gap in a real piano too. And so if we made that gap, actually, let's go like this. Oh. Let's make this gap. What did we do? Let's move it 1.5 millimeters. If we made that gap 2 mils, oh, that's actually a lot. Okay, let's take that back. So this is a 0.5 millimeter gap. I think that's fine. Right, here's what we're going to do. So what we can do is do a bit of a gap here, but only here. I'm sorry if this doesn't make any sense yet, but it will. So let's make this maybe a 2 mil gap. And we'll do the same here. We'll do a 2 mil gap. Oops. What? So obviously we're going to have to make some sacrifices. And I think the one sacrifice here is that there's going to be these little gaps like this, even when you have two keys beside each other like this. So if there's no black key here, you're still going to see that little gap, but there's no gap here. And on a piano, I think this would be totally acceptable. And this will allow our black key to have a mechanism that goes straight through that gap. But it's not a big enough gap that if the black key wasn't there, it's like too weird. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of fine. And actually to make this really work, we have to throw the gap on the other side too. So let's just quickly do that. And I think when it comes to thumbnails on this one, I have a really good idea, and I'll explain it in a minute. So that's what this module will look like. I'm thinking. And then this one, we could probably have it so this is sitting like centered. I don't think that's like a super big deal that it's on a regular piano. It's like offset like that. I think we could totally have it centered, and that's fine. So theoretically, now we can go like this. We can move this over 24. Let's actually do a bit of a pattern here. Boom. I want to do spacing minus 24, and let's do like 10 of these. Right, so you're going to have a keyboard that looks like this, and basically it's going to be like you can insert a black key wherever you want. So if you wanted to, you could do this spacing. Let's do 10 of these as well, and let's go with minus 24. Boom. Oh, I should have done 11. So this is what like a crazy keyboard would look like. This is obviously not real, but then you could get rid of that one, you could get rid of that one, you could get rid of that one. And now we have a layout that very closely resembles a regular keyboard. So what I wanted to do, a regular keyboard is this, right? So we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then it repeats. So this is the repeating pattern of a regular keyboard. Now, when it comes to microtonal music, the reason it's big right now is there's a band, Angine de Poitre. They're Quebec or a Montreal band. I botched that so hard, but that's fine. They're famous lately for playing microtonal music, but their microtonal music is... So the standard tuning of music is 12 notes, right? Which is what we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And a vast majority of music is built around this scale. And there's a reason for that. Because frequencies are built up of ratios between notes. And 12 notes gives you a really good approximation of all the frequency ratios that sound the best to our ears. Now, on a piano, there's historically there's been a bunch of different tunings. What we've kind of settled on is what's called a 12-note equal temperament scale. So that means within the octave, so here's C. When the pattern repeats again, there's going to be another C. That's a direct octave, which is exactly double the frequency. So if you have a C note, I don't know what is a C note. What frequency is middle C? Okay, let's use an A note because a C is 261.63 hertz. which is a ridiculous number. But the A note is, I think A1 is 110 hertz, or let's go with A. You've probably heard of A440 before. So an A note is 440 hertz, which means when you hit an A note, you're hearing a frequency that's vibrating at 440 hertz. You're not only hearing 440 hertz because pianos have overtones. Every instrument basically has an overtone except for a sine wave. So on a synthesizer that can produce a pure sine wave, you can actually produce a pure 440 hertz, which is honestly kind of a weird sound to hear because it's very unnatural. You don't get sine waves in nature. However, any stringed instrument, which a piano is technically a percussion instrument, but it hits a string, and when that string vibrates, it vibrates, the entire string vibrates. And so when you hit an A, the entire string, when you hit A440, the entire string is vibrating back and forth 440 times a second. Fundamentally, that's what it means when the entire string vibrates. But it also vibrates like this. It splits the string in half and vibrates in at 880 hertz, so double the frequency. And then it also splits into three, and then you start getting into what we call overtones and harmonics. And so when you're hitting that note, you're getting a bunch of other notes, and it's actually a fact of nature that things vibrate at these harmonic frequencies. Now, these harmonic frequencies are very mathematical. Like I mentioned with the string, when it's vibrating back and forth, there's a fundamental where it's vibrating the whole string, and then the first harmonic, the one you hear next loudest, is when the string is vibrating half. And so when that happens, it's doubling the frequency, and so that gives you a direct octave. But then when you get the third harmonic where it's vibrating in threes, it splits the string into threes, and each of those sections is vibrating. You get what's called a perfect fifth, which is a 2/3 ratio from the fundamental note. When I do this video, I'll explain all of this. So the harmonic series is actually a really mathematically clean setup. The fractions or the ratios between the notes are clean ratios, like 2/3, 4/3. I actually don't I don't remember, but they're all like pretty whole numbers. Unfortunately, when you look at those pure fractions of the harmonic series, that's what we call just intonation, and that's like a pure way of tuning an instrument. The problem is that as soon as you move into a different key, everything sounds out of tune because those fractions only work with that initial root note. So what we've done throughout history is we've slowly evolved into this thing that we call 12-note equal temperament. And so that basically means when you have the C note here and you play the octave up the C note, that's exactly double the frequency. Every note in between, if it was just intonation, follows a ratio based off of the C note, and they're clean ratios, but you can't change key and use those exact same frequencies. So in order to make it work, they did equal temperament, which basically approximates those frequency ratios, but instead of following them exactly, it lines them up to split that octave into 12 equal parts. So the distance in frequency between the C and the D is exactly the same distance in frequency between the D and the E. And what that allows is you can play things in different keys because different instruments have different keys, and it allows all these instruments to play with each other, and it allows you to change keys in songs without anything getting messed up. It's a very nice system. And our ears, I guess, have evolved to find that very pleasant. Even though there's technically there's certain things that are happening here that are out of tune from the natural harmonic series. It's close enough that it's not jarring. And so what this Montreal band, let me find out what this band is actually called, because I feel like a dick not knowing it. And Angine de Poitrine, which I think means something like chest pains or something like that. Awesome, very fun. They're I'm sure you've seen it. Their version of Microtonal basically maintains this 12-note scale, but all they've done is they've put essentially a note in between all of these notes that already exist. So what that allows them to do is they could play melodies that follow this 12-note scale, which as humans we're used to hearing, and just use those in-between notes as, we call them passing tones. They can climb to different notes or descend to different notes using these passing tones to get there a little bit more in a little bit more of a nuanced way. But they're still working with this general idea, and that's why it was so successful, because it was just weird enough, but it still was easy to digest for the Western music listener. However, microtonal stuff goes way deeper. And so what I'm really interested in is thinking about different equal temperament scales. So as you remember, our 12-note equal temperament scale is sort of the best approximation of dividing an octave into a certain number of notes while maintaining closely to those natural harmonic frequencies that are really pleasant for our ears. What if you divided this into 13 notes instead? Right? So instead of the octave repeating here, it repeats here. And so all we're doing is adding this second, or this 13th note here. Or if you wanted, you could add it. You could add it here instead and just repeat it there. But I think for the sake of a good thumbnail, which is obviously what I'm really aiming for here, I was thinking about having a keyboard on screen that looks like this and labeling this C, D, E, F, G, and then this one, instead of being A, B, C, this one would be H, and it would be a red letter. And I think anybody in the music world would look at that and be like, what is going on here? And then anybody who's like understands microtonal stuff and other equal temperament scale would be like, oh shit, this guy's messing with different scales. Edo scales. What does Edo stand for? I keep seeing this. Edo scale. Equal division of the octave. That's correct. So, lots of people have been experimenting with this for a long time. And there's things like a 13 Edo scale is actually like really, really weird and really hard to do anything with. But that's something I want to try. I want to see if I can write a song in 13 Edo. EDO, but I like saying Edo. It feels Japanese, which is fun. However, scales like 19 Edo are actually really nice. 19 Edo has a similar sort of idea as the 12, where it does hits closely to a lot of the natural harmonics that our ears like. So I want to be able to build all of these scales and mess around with the different layouts of these keys. And the only way to do that is with a modular keyboard like this. And I want it so that like you can build a 19 Edo scale on your keyboard, a layout that works well with that, but then you don't that's the only scale you play on that instrument. And then if you want a 13, then you have to reassemble it and stuff like that. I think that's way cooler when you're exploring this stuff than having a keyboard that just does it all. Because this is what a microtonal keyboard tends to look like. This is a microtonal keyboard. And like, how hard is this thing to play? And so like you can do 19 Edo, you could do whatever you want, and I think the lights change to help you kind of see it. But there's always going to be, if you want to just play 13 Edo, there's a lot of notes that aren't necessary anymore. And so I really want to try and maintain the typical keyboard layout that we're so used to. Here you can kind of see on this one, it shows you how you could break. What is this? This is a 35 Edo. I want to maintain sort of the look and the vibe of a regular keyboard and have it so that you can change it so that it's doing exactly what you need it to do, and only that, without having like extraneous keys on there and stuff. So that's sort of the concept. And if you then took this, okay, wait, we can just go like this, create a copy, and went like this, all of a sudden this is a 13 Edo keyboard. So that's the concept. I feel like it's really cool. Is it only cool to me? Definitely not, because my dad thinks it's cool too. And he's not biased at all. But I think this is something that I personally really, really want to explore. Like, writing music on a different scale set feels like doing math on like a different number set. You know how like we use the Arabic number set that's like multiples of 10, but there's other math. There's binary, which is totally different, and then there's like, you can do a 12 note or a 12 number set and try to do math with that, and it changes everything. It's kind of the same thing. So to me, this feels like really unexplored territory. I haven't heard music that uses these other EDO scales that sounds good, and so I really want to try and make music that is pleasing to the ear, but is technically a completely different thing than every other song out there. So that's the goal with this whole idea. And if you're watching this in the future, let me know if you think this is a good idea. If you got to this point, nobody's watching today, so I don't have direct feedback on this, which is okay. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think this will be really cool. So to make this work, like from a product design engineering perspective, there's a couple things I need to do. I need to make it so each of these keys has a button mechanism built in and is standalone. I'm thinking there could be a starter module that connects to your computer, and then the whole keyboard is built off of that starter module. And it's really going to be simple. It's just a MIDI controller, and all the actual like scale changes that you'll do will be in software. I think you can just do it in Logic. But the problem right now is, like, if you hook up a regular MIDI controller and you want to do a 13 EDO scale, your keyboard's still set up for 12. So all of a sudden your 13th note starts, or your 13th note starts here, and then your 1 is now here. So your octave would be from here to here, and that messes everything up. So this keyboard will allow you to maintain a clear idea of the octave and everything like that. Oh God, I'm rambling. Yeah, I guess another option would be you could literally just place a key here, and this would give you a 13 note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this could repeat. So this could be your 13 note. The problem with this, though, for the thumbnail at least, is as soon as you add this note, this doesn't look like a standard keyboard anymore. And then you typically want to reserve the black notes for the sharps and flats, and then these are the whole tones. So I don't really know, like I haven't thought about the theory of this yet. I don't really know how this is going to work. Oh, hey guys, sorry, I didn't realize there was people joining here. Good to see you, Tin, Talon, and Psycho Ruby Gamer. I don't think you've been on a stream before, so it's good to see you here. Yeah, I'm planning this. I'm not even 100% on this yet. I'm going through new ideas right now. I want to make a microtonal keyboard. I want to make it modular. So each key is its own module, and it'll allow you to quickly assemble keyboard layouts that are different from the standard 12-note key layout. And will allow you to explore different equal temperament scales while still having sort of a standard keyboard layout, if that makes sense. Oops. Gosh, I gotta figure out how to keep this chat up. Nice. Well, welcome. These streams can get kind of weird. I don't usually have a plan for them, and they're sort of just a bit crazy. So I appreciate you being here. Hold on, I'm just gonna pull the chat up so that I can actually see it while I'm working on this. Yeah, and so this is I've been working on another video. It's gonna have all 50 keys or be smaller. Well, so the keys themselves are gonna be standard keyboard size, but there's going to be just a bunch of them, and you can assemble however big a keyboard you want. So like you could do an 88 key full piano if you wanted to. But the idea with this is you don't even have to do the typical, C, D, E, F, G, or sorry, C, D, E, F, G, A, B with these specific sharps and flats. You could add a black note here. You could take out black notes here. You could add more white notes. There's a whole music theory thing behind this idea that I will have to explain in a video, but I think it'll be interesting. But yeah, the idea is that this keyboard will just let you assemble a keyboard really quick that is different from your typical keyboard. Or it also lets you assemble a standard keyboard with the exact number of keys that you want. Because I think with MIDI controllers and stuff, you're stuck to like 25 keys, 49 keys, and then 88 keys. And I remember I was working at a music store, and this guy had to buy the most expensive MIDI controller we had because it was the only 49 key keyboard that fit his desk. Every other 49 keyboard was slightly too big for his desk, and so he just had to buy this one that happened to be like the most expensive one because it was the only one that fit. If there was something like this, he could assemble a 48 key keyboard. Take one key out, all of a sudden it fits. Or if you have room, you could do a 50 key keyboard. So it's more just the idea that keyboarded instruments are pretty rigid, and it would be cool to be able to change them around, add keys, delete keys, and reorient them as you wish, while still maintaining the typical piano layout, or the typical piano black and white key layout, if that makes sense. So from an engineering perspective, I don't think it's going to be too hard. MIDI controllers are pretty basic. They're just glorified buttons. They're going to be pressure sensitive. So if you hit them harder, the note's louder. But okay, I'm glad you think it sounds interesting, because what I love about these live streams is I can like actively sort of discuss ideas before spending, a couple months on something and just hoping that people find it interesting. So I appreciate the feedback on this early sort of discussion on this. From an engineering perspective, I need these to all sort of click together really easily using magnets. Each module basically just has to have a button, and I think the brain will sit off in its own separate module off to the left side that will connect to your computer, and then you can just click these notes in. Mechanism wise, I think I want to explore compliant mechanisms for this, because cheap keyboards feel cheap for a reason. Expensive keyboards feel expensive for a reason. So I want to try and get a more like premium feel out of it. And I think with a compliant mechanism, I can get sort of that really satisfying button press feel without having to add weight, which would be really nice. And it would be a great opportunity to explore compliant mechanisms and maybe different material choices and whatnot. As far as the modularity is concerned, I need to figure out a good way that you can either have a white key connected to a black key or a white key connected to a white key. I don't think there's a scenario where you'd want a black key connected to a black key. If you do any music making, like live, having sections of keyboard scattered around would make playing sections easier without having to go back. That's kind of a good idea too. If you do any So you mean like almost having like, you could just set up like multiple different keyboards for different sounds? Because you can technically, with a regular MIDI controller keyboard, you can technically like divide the keyboard up into different sounds with software. And that is something a lot of people do. But maybe having them physically separated would actually be really cool too. But that's an interesting thought. I think what I'm going to do here, just to make this a little easier to visualize, I want to kind of maintain this sort of 5mm thickness of the actual keys, and then have some way to combine these. I was just asking for clarification, because I know on a standard MIDI controller keyboard, you can, with software, separate, you could have these 5 keys programmed to one instrument, and then you could have these other keys programmed to a totally different instrument. And so that allows you to kind of have access to different instruments on one keyboard. That is doable with current technology. But are you suggesting you could have them like actually physically split apart? And then I guess in that case, like what would be the benefit to that over just having a separate MIDI controller. I'm not too sure. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to, because I've had this idea in my brain, but it really helps to actually put it out into the design so I can start to actually visualize every angle of it and make sure this would actually physically work. Because what I'm thinking is there could be a third module that connects white keys together and have all the connections happening in this gap here. So let me just sketch this out for a second. Project that and that. For example, if you have a whole room of instruments, you wouldn't have to rush back to the piano to play its part. So yes, a physical separation. Yeah, that would be cool. And that's like, I mean, that's what people do with standard MIDI controllers to this day. Like I have this little guy hooked up, and if I wanted to, I don't actually have it hooked up that way, but I could control my other instruments from this one keyboard, which is just sitting at my desk, so I don't have to run over to my synthesizer that's in the corner. I could just access it through this. So that exists already. That is a very standard thing. But I'm trying to explore alternative musical scales with this, because microtonal music is all the rage right now, and I like the idea of having something that enables people to explore microtonality in a very different way. Okay, I'm kind of like, why isn't this working? I just need to work from this, I guess. I need to get rid of all the other sketches. There we go. This will be easier. Weird. What is going on here? I guess I'm just going to do this instead. Like that, and then just have this separated. Oh, no. 0.5 mil. 0.5 mil. So like that layout, maybe. I don't know yet. Just give me 1 second. I just got to grab a thing off my printer so I can get another print going on it. Just 1 second. No, it's, well, I mean, it's gonna be a 3D printed instrument, but it's gonna be a controller. it's it's still music related, but the actual 3D printed piano is not going to produce the sound. It's gonna be controlling whatever software instrument you want. Um, but I am still doing like the other idea I'm working on. I'm revisiting the 3D printed kick drum thing because I failed last time. So I need to redeem myself on that, which I have a crazy idea for that too. So it's not this is just a little bit out of the realm, but it's still music related and still 3D printed related. Okay, that fits perfect. I was just printing a thing for my friend, and I've been putting it off, so I've been trying to get that done today as well. Which I just gotta do one more of these. Can I fit 2 on here? Nope. Feels like it should fit, but yeah, no, it's gonna fit. That's fine. Let's do that. Okay. Yeah, this I was explaining it earlier, but nobody was on the stream at that point. Um, but basically, are you super familiar with like music theory at all, or are you more the engineering type? Because the people that watch my videos are either both or one of the two, and so depending on what your background is, my explanation of microtonal music will be a little bit different. Oh, so this actually has to be way thinner, I guess. There's not a lot of space to work with. Ooh, nice. Which printer did you get? Theoretically, I guess I could have this come down. Oh, did it just combine those two? Nice. How are you liking it? I've heard only good things about the A1. Um, I think it's a really good. It seems like a really good start. I I'm quite a fan of the Bamboo stuff. It's all very very easy to use. I'm not much of a tinkerer. Um, yeah, like the P series. Like I bought a P1S couple of years ago now, and I've had a couple other printers since then, and like I'm printing on the P1S right now. That this little TPU thing this gasket thing is on my P1S. The enclosed ones are great too, but the A1 will get you really far as well. They also have the X2D coming out, which is like a mini version of my big printer back there. It's really cool. But anyways, so the entire idea with this video is there's this thing happening in music right now where microtonal music is all the rage. And so what microtonal music is, pretty much every song you've probably ever heard, at least from the Western world, is based off of a 12-note scale. And so the pattern is like this, right? Every keyboard you've ever seen, the shredder. I have heard about those, and I would love to get into that because I don't throw away any of my like scraps or prototypes or anything, but like I'm starting to get way too many and I don't have the space for it. So I would love a way to recycle the material, because that just makes so much sense. I haven't looked too much into it, but I would love to explore that. All music you hear is based around this 12-note scale. And there's a natural reason why, even in other cultures, a lot of it is based around this 12-note scale. And it's kind of based around how frequencies behave in nature. And this 12-note scale is the best approximation, the simplest approximation of how frequencies behave in nature. And that's why we sort of have become so accustomed to this. However, there was this band that came out of Montreal called Angine de Poitrine, and they're exploring microtonal music, which basically adds a note in between all of these notes. So they're playing with like a 24-note scale, and that 12 note is standard sheet music. And there's a whole history on how we ended up with this. And this isn't technically a perfect scale. This has gone through iteration and iteration of like approximations and fine tuning to get to the point we're at now. It is really fascinating stuff. And so this band is exploring microtonal music, which in their case means just adding notes in between these existing 12 notes. Microtonal music, though, isn't new. In fact, like a lot of Eastern countries, like India, uses a 24-note scale, I believe, and that's why their music is so like identifiable when you listen to it, because they are using the same microtonal stuff. However, there's a totally even on top of that, there's a totally separate version of microtonal music that's even weirder. And that's what I'm trying to explore. Yeah, so like a trombone, for example, is I don't know what the exact term for it. On a guitar, it's called a fretless instrument. And so like on a standard guitar, you've got all the little metal bands on the neck, and those bands allow you to hit specific notes without having to be exact where your finger is. But if you take those bands away, or like a violin is the same thing and a trombone's the same thing, those don't have specific points that dictate the note. You have to be exact with your finger placement or exact with the slide placement of the trombone to hit those specific notes. And so what that allows you to do is you can start getting in between notes. And there's a lot of the best music comes out of the imperfections in there. And it brings up the whole AI music debate as well, because imperfections is what makes music real. And when I talk about this 12-note scale in the video, I'll dive deep into that, because this 12-note scale isn't perfect either. This is an approximation. And there's when I say perfect, there's a scientific reason for that. So yeah, like a trombone can hit those notes, can hit in between notes. Now pianos have never been able to. Piano and they've been laid out like this, I think, for centuries now. And you can never hit a note in between these two notes, for example. You can never hit a note in between these two notes, for example. So pianos are notoriously unmicrotonal. And so I want to create a piano that lets you explore microtonality a little bit easier. So in the case of like Indian music and this band that I just mentioned, you'd be able to lay out a keyboard that puts a note in between all of these existing notes. But there's more. So the way this keyboard works, this is the 12 note layout, and then all a keyboard is this just repeated. So you would have this whole thing, and then you just repeat it. So this is, and a standard keyboard has 88 keys, but it's all just repeating these 12 notes. I always wonder why they left the space in the black keys, and now I know. Yeah, I mean, that all gets into there's actually a reason why there's a space here, but the black keys fill up this. There is a theoretical reason why. Basically every note, when you think about music, you always kind of want to start on a specific note, and we call that the root note. And this also relates to what key the song is in. So if you've heard people say, oh, the song's in this key, what key is the song in? That's what they're relating to. They're relating to the root note. And then every other note in that song is related to that root note by a specific ratio. And when we're talking about ratios, it's the ratio of the frequency. So you might have heard of A440 before, and that is the standard that we tune all of our instruments to, which means when you hit that A440, you're actually getting a vibration that vibrates at 440 hertz. And so if you have a song in the key of A440, every other note in that song, the frequency is a ratio of that 440 hertz. That's like it's like a rough way of explaining it. So when you think about music in that way, it's like very mathematical. And so the reason we have a gap here is just based on when you take those ratios, you start getting weird sort of gaps, and that's where this gap comes from. That was super rough, but I'll explain it better in the actual video when I've actually had time to sort of figure out how to explain it. But anyway, so on all keyboards, you're just getting a repetition of these 12 notes. And so once you get to this note and this note are actually the same note. And we in today's music, we work on an EDO scale, which means oh god, I just looked this up too and I forget. EDO stands for equal. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Let me just find this. EDO stands for equal division of the octave. So what that means is you have an octave. So here's your C note, and this is also a C note, but it's an octave up. So it's literally exactly twice the frequency. So if this C note is at 100 hertz, for example, which it's not, but we're just using 100 as an example, then this C note is at 200 hertz. And so our ears really like that relationship. Our ears hear 100 hertz. When they hear 200 hertz, they go, oh, those are like the same note. It feels good in my ears. And so what we've done in music is we've then taken these, all the remaining 11 notes and spaced them equally within the spectrum of the frequency range between this note and this note. And that's how we lay out our scales. But so this is a 12-note EDO scale, the same note, but can be an octave far. Yeah, exactly. And an octave just means it's double the frequency. So an octave exists in nature. It's just simply the doubling of the frequency. Now, what I want to explore, and what others have explored in the past, but I don't see anybody doing actively, is what if you divided this octave into 13 notes or 19 notes? All of a sudden, the distance between all of these notes changes, right? And so all of a sudden you're left with a scale that is completely unique from what 90% of the world is accustomed to. And so in my head, I feel like making music using a different scale type will give me an opportunity to create music that's literally brand new. It might be weird. It's probably going to sound weird. It's probably not going to sound normal. And I think most people will be like, that sounds out of tune. But I do think the slight differences in relationships between the note will let me access different emotions and different sort of different sounds that aren't available in the 12-note scale. And the issue is with standard keyboards, you just can't do that. You can't explore those scales. So that's why I want to make a modular keyboard that lets you expand on that. Yeah. It's literally just like unexplored territory, and that excites me. That's what all of this is always about. That's what this whole YouTube channel is about. I just want to like explore things that feel like they need to be explored. And what's really cool about that is I can engineer something that's going to let me do that better. And I haven't seen anything like this before. And I definitely want to completely new vibes, and you can name them all. That's the thing. I'm not the first. There's definitely other people that have explored different scale divisions. But it's just so not mainstream and so niche, because usually the people that are exploring these scale types or exploring these different avenues of music, usually they're really far down the weeds in music theory and like the actual concept of it, that they don't tend to try and make music that other people enjoy, at least I find, unless maybe it just can't be done. I've tried to listen to songs that are done in different scales. It's very hard to find music like that. And a lot of the times it's just like it sounds like way too conceptual. So my goal with this ultimately is going to be, I'm going to build this, explore the different scales, and see if I can find one where I can actually, because I'm like a pop music, like I like pop music. It doesn't really make sense. I enjoy it though, and I understand why I enjoy it. It's like candy to me. And I like other music too. Like I like more like jazz and stuff, a little bit more complicated stuff. But when push comes to shove, I'm just listening to pop music and like rock music and like, you know, the really, yeah, it's more for science than than the art of it, I find. So I feel like I'm like kind of set up well to simultaneously get to explore this stuff, but also try and make something that's like palatable and something that people can actually enjoy. And hopefully that will bring it into more of a mainstream thing. And of course, like this band, Engine de Poitrine, they're huge right now just because they're exploring it. They're not the first to explore it, but they're doing it in a way that people are enjoying, and that's kind of the goal with this whole thing. So, it's going to require a lot of sort of like, on my part, I'm going to need to be really smart with how I explain things, and so that's kind of half of it. But then also the engineering of it's actually going to be quite complicated. And I've never built anything like this before, so once again, it's yeah. You can literally look up this name, and there's going to be a million videos on them, and they have a very distinct look, and I think that's part of their success. They've got these like polka dot outfits on, and they look like aliens, and they act like aliens. And that's the whole appeal, is they're like just so weird, but in a really, really palatable way. Um, and let me know when you do look them up, um, what you think of the sound, because that's their whole thing. Their whole shtick is their music sounds like nothing else. But to me, it actually doesn't really sound that unique, because it's um, I've explored with microtonal stuff in the past, and in my opinion, their type of microtonal music is like just the first little baby step into microtonal. Because what they've done is they've inserted notes in between these 12 notes, but they still have access. I just did the Google search. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's their whole thing. And they're massive this year. But all they've done is that they've inserted notes in between these 12 notes, so they can, touch on those notes that sound out of tune. But at the end of the day, they're still working within this same 12 note infrastructure. So they still get to benefit from the 12 note structure that we're all used to. But as soon as you take the 12 note structure away, everything changes. And that's what that's the territory I want to explore with this. My OCD is kicking in right now. Oh, I can't get those lines. Oh, there we go. Oh, that looks so good. So what do I got to do? I got to figure out how these modules will stick together. And I think the key, pun intended, will be to basically what's the difference here? Let's maybe make it 6 millis. And let's do 6 millis here. I'm not really designing anything specific right now. I'm just trying to understand the relationship between these different modules. So it's going to be like a lot of this is sort of just figuring that out. Like that feels pretty good to me. And that allows me to have space there. I guess what I need to do is I need to figure out what the gaps are between these. I think it's going to be doable. It's just going to be hard. There's not a lot of space. And I need to figure out like how. I've never built a MIDI controller before. I'm assuming they're simple, but I actually have no idea. And if push comes to shove, I can buy a MIDI controller and rip parts out of it. That might be the way to go. But I don't really want to have to do that. I think from scratch would be a lot cooler. So this is one of the ideas. I'm working on a couple ideas. The other one, the kick drum, is another big thing. And basically what I wanted to do today is just sort of see if I can visualize it better. What's happening here? Yeah. I want to see if I can, because the big problem with my videos is I always struggle with thumbnails. And thumbnails are such a huge factor in making videos these days. I think they always have been, but like lately it's like crazy. So I want to really nail it on this one. On all of my videos moving forward, that's like a big goal of mine. So if I go 250, so theoretically 250 is where we're at. I know I'm jumping around here. Thumbnails make or break. And I don't like doing them. But in the past, I've spent a month or two on a video, and then I try and make a thumbnail, and I always panic, and I feel like I always fail at it. So this time, my goal is to design these things in a way where I can basically just rely on the fact that the device itself will be my thumbnail. And like obviously I can mess with it a little bit, but that's sort of the goal. I need it to be thumbnailable right from the get-go, so I don't have to mess around too much. I don't like that. I wish I didn't have to do that, but obviously, I mean, it's just the way it is. Did you by any chance see my kick drum video last time? Just finished listening to a few snippets. It doesn't sound as weird as I thought. Yeah, exactly. That's my whole point. Is it's like technically they're doing microtonal music, but at the end of the day, they're still within sort of the 12-note landscape that is comfortable for our ears. Okay, you did watch that video. Okay, good. So then I don't have to explain how badly I failed on that one, and I can tell you what the goal is for this one because I think it's going to be cool. I really appreciate you checking that out too. That's awesome. So with the kick drum, and I have to mention, like, there were so many comments on that video that really, when I was done that video, I was feeling so like discouraged about it, and the comments were just so awesome, and there were so many good ideas, and so a lot of this came from just me picking through the comments and figuring out what I think actually made the most sense. So, I think it's so cool that I got to kind of lean on the community a little bit with that. So essentially at the end of the day, my main goals with this kick drum is I need to be able to convert a impact into a slow oscillation of something. I need to turn that energy from that impact into a 40 to 50 hertz oscillation, which none of my original kick drum designs did that. The one at the very end after the song kind of did it, but it was like messy, it rattled, and at the end of the day, even if it did work perfectly, it was still like insanely quiet. And so with Exactly. Yeah, because nothing goes according to plan. Ever. It's almost like a rule of thumb. Failure is undoubtedly one of the most important parts of creation, and I strongly believe that. I don't like it. I don't like failing, but it's the only way to move forward. You have to take risks, and you have to fail in order to learn. So the big issue with this kick drum, the physics behind it is when you hit something, there's an immediate sound called the transient, and that is when you're getting the whole frequency spectrum in an instant. And with a kick drum, that transient is really important. That is how you hear the kick drum in a mix. But then with a standard kick drum, you only hear that transient for a split second, and then the body of the drum is what defines the kick drum. Because I can make a transient anywhere, right? Hitting my table, I'm getting transients. Clapping is a transient. But you're getting none of the resonance of a kick drum because obviously there's nothing to resonate there. And so the way a kick drum works, it's big enough and it relies on the size, because the bigger something is, the more it's the more energy it can convert into a slower acting oscillation. And so with a kick drum's skin, because it's so big, you put all that energy into it, and it absorbs it to an extent and starts vibrating, and because it's so big, it's going to vibrate slowly. And then as well, the shell is really big, and that also vibrates in its own way. And so the combination of all of that is where you get the body of a kick drum. And so the goal is to first create a way to convert that strike into that slow oscillation. But the problem, so I need to convert that strike into a slow oscillation in a tiny form factor. And so, yeah, I think it will. And what's really cool about doing all of this is just getting a better understanding of how things vibrate and how things oscillate. And I don't have all the answers. I don't, I suck at math. So like there's mathematical ways you can get to the theory of all this stuff, but I don't have any of that. I'm not smart enough for that. So I just, for me, it's like getting my hands on it and actually working with the stuff is how I learn. And so I think and at the end of the day, music, sound, it's all just vibrations. It's all just oscillations. And I think every direction, every step in that direction I take is getting me closer to a general understanding of how all this stuff works. So I'm very confident I can take a strike. I can take the energy of a strike and convert it into that slow oscillation in a small form factor. That part's easy. And basically I'm going to do that by having a tongue. So there's a thing called a tongue drum, which is basically like, it's like a dish, and it has these tongues cut out. And when you hit the tongue, your reverb stuff, that would help slow down. Well, the problem with the reverb is I actually didn't want to slow it down. Personally, with reverb, I like hearing the high frequency stuff shine through, and so I wanted those high frequencies to come through. The problem I was having with my reverb was it just wasn't picking up enough. And the stuff that it did, it was like pinpointing specific frequencies. So I wasn't really able to get like the wash of reverb that reverb is for. Like you want reverb to really give you like a wash of frequencies. And it's the same issue. The drum. Yeah, so I did experiment with adding weights off camera. I think I mentioned it just briefly in the video. The reality is that whole process of trying the drum the first time was just trying a bunch of different stuff, and just nothing was making a difference. And I know why now, I think. So I did add weights, and I was able to get slower oscillations, and I indirectly was adding weight by building like larger spring mechanisms and stuff, and just changing the spring stiffness and everything, and that was changing the oscillation. I could see it. I could see these slow oscillations happening. This brings me to the second big issue with these tiny drums is I not only need it to oscillate slowly, I need there to be so much energy in that slow oscillation that it's actually loud enough to complement the transient hit. Because the issue with all of my other kick drum attempts was no matter how good I could make the low end sound, because some of those drums, if I put them right up against my ear, and actually the kick drum I used in the last video, if you tap it lightly and you have it right up against your ear or right up against a microphone, it sounds like a kick drum. It has that low oscillating frequency and it sounds really nice. The problem is you want to be able to really play these things. You want to be able to hit them hard, and you want to hear those low frequencies loudly. And that was just the big issue, is I could never get, no matter what I tried, I couldn't get it loud enough where the actual transient that you get from the initial strike complemented the sound. It would just be like this super loud transient, and then like in the background just the tiniest little low frequency, and it just wasn't working. And so that's the issue. Transient's just way too loud. And so my idea, what I'm hoping I can do, is essentially take that strike energy, which is ideally going to be quite a bit. I want to be able to really hit this thing. Convert that into a low oscillation, and then somehow amplify that low oscillation in a totally isolated way. Because the problem is, if I just throw a horn on the whole thing, it's going to also amplify the strike, and there's just a lot of stuff happening. And like I could argue that like plastic just absorbs so much energy, but at the end of the day, drum skins are plastic too. And it's not like I need this thing to vibrate for a long time. I need them to vibrate really slowly just for a short period after you hit it. And so I need to convert all that energy into a slow, short amount of time of vibration. And then I need to amplify that vibration loud enough that you can hear it in the room without having to have your ear right up against it. So, the concept for all of this is basically it's going to be a tongue drum, which I did one of these way back in the day. And I'm just basically I did this right after I did the kick drum video because I just want to see it, and then I abandoned it until right now. So this is a tongue drum, and the idea here is that when you hit this little tongue is going to vibrate back and forth slowly, and I think you might be able to hear it. Right, you're getting like, it's probably insanely quiet. Oops, sorry. So, this is the first sort of step. And there's actually a couple things. You should talk to Zach Friedman. He's tried also. I would love to talk to Zach Friedman. He seems like such a fun guy. I want to know what he sounds like. I want to know what he sounds like in real life, like not scripted. I think it's probably similar. I think he probably just talks like that, but he's always throwing in like alliteration and stuff that's so fun. But yeah, I would love to talk to him. Yeah, so you can hear it, right? It's there. It's just so quiet. And so I have a couple theories to all of this. This is a really flexible thing. So this vibrates way too much. But it is kind of in that frequency range that I'm going for. The problem is a tongue on its own like this is not going to be able to produce the pressure waves that you need to amplify that low frequency, right? This is shaking back and forth. It's like if you take a string from a guitar, for example, and just had it tensioned to the same that you'd have on a guitar, but there's no body, there's no neck, there's nothing, and you pluck it, it's very, very quiet because that string on its own is moving a tiny little bit of air. And this actually gets into another sort of concept with music where our ears can pick up high frequency sounds a lot easier, because in order to hear a sound, you actually need to kind of hear a certain amount of the sound wave to pick it up. And so because high frequency sounds are so much smaller, you only need to hear a tiny little bit of it to actually hear it. But a large sound wave is really long, and you need to hear, like, I think it was like 3 oscillations before your ears actually determine it as a specific sound. So when you have a string tensioned across just empty air and you pluck it, you don't really hear it because it's just not producing enough of a pressure wave that your ears can pick up. And that's why you need to couple that via the bridge that the string is tensioned over, which then couples to the soundboard of a guitar, of an acoustic guitar, for example. And it's actually the soundboard of the guitar that you're hearing vibrate. So the string vibrations go down into the body of the guitar, and you're hearing you can't see it, but the body's actually vibrating back and forth like that. And the body's got a big surface area, so that's enough to amplify it to the point that you can hear it. And that's why, like, a ukulele, for example, which is a tiny little body, can't really hit those low notes, whereas a big, dreadnought acoustic guitar has a lot of low end. It sounds really good because it's got this huge body, so it's able to amplify those low frequencies really well. So that's where I'm limited with this, because no matter what I do, this small body is not going to have enough surface area to amplify that sound on its own. And then this is going to get back to my speaker analogy, because in my kick drum video, I obviously reference my small little 3-inch speakers, which can easily produce those low frequencies that we want at very loud volumes. And they're not using size to their advantage. So I am going to be still working with this whole Helmholtz resonance thing, but it's actually this thing I'm learning about called impedance matching. And there's going to be a bit of that in this design, but basically what I need to do is I need to somehow convert. So once I hit this starts vibrating, and then I need to convert this into, could you put a regular drum body on that? The thing is, it's the size is the issue. So if I want to keep this small, it doesn't matter what body I put on this, it's not going to be able to amplify the low frequency. So alternatively speaking, if I were to print a large kick drum, it would sound like a kick drum. It's the sound of a drum is so coupled to the size of the drum, it doesn't really matter what it's made out of. Like, there are plastic drums, like acrylic drums have been around forever, and they sound amazing. And so it's not the material that's the issue. It's not the specific design of the drum that actually makes it sound the way it does. It is literally coupled to the size of it. The bigger it is, the lower it's going to sound. And that's why drums, like, fundamentally and historically have been so prominent, because they're super simple. The concept behind a drum is extraordinarily simple. You can make them out of literally anything, as long as you kind of follow that whole, the bigger it is, the lower it's going to sound, you're going to be fine. So the idea, that's what's so compelling about this, is the idea of making a drum that sounds low but is tiny goes against, like, the whole history of drums and percussion. But the thing is, speakers were the same. Speakers, in order to get low sounds, you needed bigger speakers. And that was just the reality of it, until people started messing around with Helmholtz resonance and passive radiators and everything, now we can have these tiny little speakers that just pump out bass. And I think I like, in my head, this should be doable. And basically what's going to happen, so my idea is you're going to have the tongue, which vibrates. And so the tongue's job is to convert the strike energy into the oscillating energy. But the tongue on its own doesn't have the surface area enough to make a loud enough bass sound. And it's because just the nature of a tongue, being in this shape, I can't just put a body around this. And I can't even put like a horn on this. The way a speaker works, because it's a round thing that goes back and forth, you can seal it, right? There's no air going through the speaker, so you can actually seal it and then capture the oscillation, the pressure of that oscillation, and send it through a horn that will use impedance matching to amplify that oscillation. Problem is, you can't do that with this because the way a tongue is shaped, the way the tongue works, I can't air seal this because there's always going to be a gap where the tongue vibrates, right? Like there's always going to be an air gap here. So in order to make this work, I have to take that air gap away. So instead of trying to seal this weird shape up with some like flexible material or something, I'm going to couple this point using a rod or something and couple it to a cone that will then be a speaker cone, essentially. And so when you hit this, it's coupled to the cone, and now the cone is also vibrating at that low frequency. Then through that speaker cone vibrating, I should be able to isolate it, put air around it, and then use a curved tube that is long enough to focus that 40 to 50 hertz oscillation, and then through impedance matching actually amplify it to the point where it's loud enough. And that's the theory. And so this drum is going to look really weird. And what I think is going to be really interesting about this is it's probably not going to sound like an acoustic drum, because the other sort of natural phenomenon with drums is when you have a tongue like this or a string, they have very simple oscillation patterns. So like this guy is going to vibrate back and forth, and then there's also a mode where it's vibrating like this and stuff, and it's actually going to be like part of the harmonic series that we talked about earlier. And this is where the science of the whole scales and everything comes in. Strings are the same. When you pluck a string, if it's hooked to the cone, wouldn't it stop the tongue from moving? So this is where the material science is going to be really crucial. I need to make the cone free moving enough that it doesn't impede too much on the movement of the tongue. And I need to make the tongue stiff enough that I can hit it as hard as I want, and it'll still maintain that slow oscillation. And if I do it stiff enough and have it and use the right material, it should be able to convert that energy. It should be able to absorb a lot of that strong strike energy and have enough driving force to drive that little cone. And the whole thing is, it only needs to do it for like a second, if not less. We only need like a second of oscillation. So I really need this to this is going to take the impact and convert all of that directly into that little cone. The other way to look at it is like, a gramophone, like the old record players. Those didn't have electricity. Those didn't have speakers, right? So, those didn't have speakers. They had the needle that was touching just grooves in a disc on your record, and then that needle was hooked to a diaphragm, which is literally just a tiny little metal like lid. And then that diaphragm went through this giant horn, and those tiny little scratches on that disc was enough to move that diaphragm enough to actually hear it audibly in the room. Now, the issue is those are notoriously bad at reproducing low volumes, but I think that's more of an issue with the grooves on the disc and how, like, that diaphragm was like, the diaphragm in a gramophone's like that big. I'm going to be able to do like at least like a 3-inch cone, which is the same as my speaker. And I think it'll work. I hope it works. I'm relying on this to work. But yeah, so with a regular drum skin, unlike a string, which vibrates very predictably, and you can actually mathematically track the frequencies that come off a string when you pluck it, a drum skin, because it's round, it's like a 2-dimensional thing as opposed to just a string, which is 1-dimensional. A drum skin has a whole bunch of different ways that it vibrates. Like, it vibrates like this, but then it's got like you can divide it up into all these different weird ways that it vibrates when you hit it. And so that's why drums to our ears don't typically have like a specific pitch to them. Like, they're not playing a note. It sounds more like it's just like a sound. It has tone to it, but it's not specifically a note because that skin vibrates in weird ways. This tongue is going to vibrate more like a string. It's a lot more predictable, the frequencies that are going to come off this. And you can even hear it, right? Like there is kind of a specific note there. But I think I'm going to work with that, because I think it would actually be really interesting if this kick drum didn't sound like a regular acoustic kick drum, but sounded more like, maybe like an 808 kick drum or like an electronic kick drum. And then I also want to have a slider here with a counterweight, so you can actually tune the drum by sliding that weight and get different tones or different pitches essentially. So I think it'll end up having a unique sound, which if this ended up just sounding like exactly like a kick drum, that would be really cool. But I think it would actually be more useful sounding a little bit unique in that sense, a little bit more like on pitch, which, like, if you listen to hip hop music or anything, a lot of them use an 808 kick drum or something that's actually more pitch based than a standard kick drum. And so I think that would be super cool to have a acoustic instrument kick drum that sounds more like an electronic one. So, yeah. I mean, and like you can tune regular drums too, but you never get like an actual pitch out of them. And actually, there is a guy, I forget his name. He's a drummer that I used to be obsessed with drums when I was a kid. That's the only thing that I ever wanted to like pursue 100% for a while. Like I wanted to play drums so bad. And there was a guy, a famous drummer, who literally had like the biggest drum kit ever, and each tom he did tune to specific pitches so he could play like melodies on his drums. It was the most 70s thing out. Like, it's the most 70s thing I've ever seen. So impractical, so ridiculous, didn't even sound that good, but really fun. The whole idea behind this though is like, I eventually want to, like, this if this works, I'm probably going to take it out of 3D printing world and like, make the tongue out of like steel, because steel is amazing at converting strike energy into oscillating energy. So I believe if I made this out of steel, like, it would work super well. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, the whole idea of this is I want to literally have a drum kit that is so compact that it takes up like relatively no space, but then I can just like lug it around and set it up instantly and just have a drum kit that actually sounds really good and is loud enough that I can play it. It's not going to be as loud as a regular drum kit, which I think is a really good thing because drum kits are notoriously like way too loud. So that's sort of the idea. Is ideally I'll have a drum kit that I can actually just like jam out on, play totally normally, but it's really, really tiny and compact. I think that would be so fun. Yeah. So basically, this is sort of the concept. I'm just kind of redoing this. I think I'm actually going to flip it over though. So instead, originally I was going to have it kind of like this shape, but I think I'm going to flip it over and have it this way. There's another aspect. There's another reason why I want to go with the tongue design. So one thing with kick drums, I'll use this. When you hit a kick drum, you're hitting it in the center of the drum. And there's like two techniques when you're playing drum kit. When you hit the drum, you can either rest the beater, so that's when you hit it, or they call it burying the beater. So a lot of people when they play, they'll hit it and they'll just leave the beater on the skin. And then there's other people that bounce the beater, so they'll hit it and like take the beater away. Obviously that has a different effect on the overall sound of the drum. When you hit it and remove it, it allows the skin to reverberate at its natural, like it allows it, so when you do it like that, you end up getting a lot more of a boomy sound out of your kick drum. When you hit it and bury the beater, you are actively dampening a lot of those vibrations. So you lose a lot of the resonance. Usually it's a much quicker sounding kick drum sound, and people like that. But because of the size of the drum and like the fact that the shell itself is vibrating as soon as you hit the drum, and the fact that the skin is so big that even if you're burying the beater, the rest of the skin can still vibrate. It just can't vibrate at that big fundamental resonance, but the rest of the skin can still vibrate. So you still get tone out of it. So the reason I wanted to do a tongue is because I want to be able to hit it at the joint of the tongue. I want to be hitting it up here. I don't want to be hitting it here because I want to be able to play it while I want to be able to bury the beater if I want to. And right now, if I hit this and bury the beater, it obviously kills the resonance completely. And for this whole design to work, this thing needs to be vibrating back and forth. And so if you bury the beater, that kills the resonance. But if you hit it up here and you bury the beater, this still should resonate to an extent. It'll be less, but it won't be zero. And so I think that is like a pretty good approximation for what happens on a real drum kit when you're burying versus not burying the beater. And I think that will allow me to, because that when you're drumming, that is something drummers do, is they'll, depending on the song or depending on the mood they're going for, they'll either bury or not bury. And so that's a big part of drumming. And so I don't want to take that away. I don't want to have a drum where you have to not, where it doesn't let you do that level of nuance. So it's important to me that I maintain that. And that's why this tongue design is, I think the way to go. I'm rambling so hard today. I hope this is all interesting for you. Clearly I'm very passionate about this kick drum thing. I've thought about it so much, and I really want this to work. So I hope it's making sense. So I think I want to flip this around. I'm going to model this up based on the way I'm seeing it in my head. It's not necessarily the way it's going to look, but the idea with today, my goal for today was to have a visual representation of what's been in my head for a while, and that'll allow me to verify if these ideas are going to be strong enough from a packaging, a YouTube thumbnail perspective to move forward with them, because I have to commit early on these designs because I don't have a lot of time. So I need to like really nail it on the first go with these. Not on the first go, but I need the concept to be nailed, because I won't be able to shift gears later. I appreciate that. It's really cool to have you here, because I talk about this stuff with like my dad and my wife, and my dad's a musician too, so he's pretty receptive to it. But it's, I know them, and so I try and explain things in a specific way that I think is going to be the most palatable for them. But when I'm working on a video, I'm not making a video for them. I'm making a video for a whole range of people. So it's really important that I can actually sort of start to try and explain these concepts, and and you can give me feedback on if it's actually like cool or if I'm just losing my mind. So I really appreciate your you being here. It means a lot. So yeah, I think what I want to do here is I want to get this in, and then like, should I just offset this? Maybe I'll just offset this for now. Yeah. Let's go with that. And then we'll do another offset. And then to actually get the tongue. Well, I appreciate that. And, I wish I was a little more, I was just going to get to that. So I do try to stick to a schedule of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. PST. I've been okay at it, but I've definitely like bailed on streams. I've streamed in between days. That's kind of the main thing. It's usually around this time, though. I don't really stream in the mornings or at night, like, at all. This is sort of what works best. So I usually try and like make a post. At least if I'm gonna be missing a stream on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, I'll usually make a post on one of the two streaming channels. Because that's the thing. I also have the music streaming channel. But I haven't been doing much on there lately because I've been having to work on these projects. So I'm probably going to be on this channel more than anything, and I'll make little posts, sort of alerting people if I have to miss a stream, and then usually I'll mention, or if I plan on doing an unexpected stream, I'll make posts there. But that's a schedule I try to stick to. I think I'm going to be a lot more diligent now because I'm working on 2, maybe 3 videos simultaneously right now. And I'm gonna need to be here more reliably. So hopefully that means I won't be missing streams so much, and I can start to really stick to the schedule. And I kind of just go for as long as, this kind of leads up to dinner for me. So I try and go couple hours at least. But I live on a farm, and we have like a lot of farm stuff going on. So I'm kind of at the whim of what's going on the farm a little bit. So the farm's a lot of work. It is. But my wife handles most of it. Luckily, and it's what she likes to do. So, but there's obviously things that there's things that I can help out with, and I try to help out as much as possible. Um, so I'm thinking, then a strike point can be like maybe. This looks super weird, but I think it's. Maybe that circle's too big. How big is this? 97 mils. Yeah, no, and I get it. I do appreciate my free time. Um, and like it's not a working farm; it's like a hobby farm. So, um, but like we do rely on it for food and stuff quite a bit. So it's and we're like trying to expand it and make it a lot more. So it's a bit of it's definitely a lot of work. Um, but it is her passion. So it makes it easy to um it's nice that she likes to do that. I'm glad she likes to do that over, you know, totally other things. Um, okay, 80. That didn't make any sense, but I really like I love having animals and stuff and fresh veggies and all the eggs. Oh, fresh eggs is like an unbeatable thing. Um, well, she just grows like all of the basic vegetables and herbs. We're trying to do more fruits this year, but we live in a pretty cold climate, so fruits are pretty hard for us. Um, I think there's the basic fruits that we can get, but we want to try and get some other stuff. So we're trying to do a greenhouse this year, and oh yeah, we're doing a cornfield this year too. That's the other thing. So we've done like little corn batches in the past, but like we eat corn so much when it's available. Not that much. It's not crazy, but like I love corn. We all love corn. Um, and since we do live in rural areas, it's pretty easy for us to buy corn. And it's pretty cheap. But we're gonna do a full cornfield this year. Um, ideally, hopefully. I haven't done it yet. I still have to do that. We have like the we have this like really old property um that is not uh it hasn't been farmed on. I don't know if like really ever in recent history. So we have a lot of work to do with the actual soil. There's so many rocks, and so a lot of what I end up doing is just like driving an excavator and shoveling out giant piles of dirt and sifting it through and getting all the rocks out. That's been like it's been a lot of um my days the last little bit. Why isn't it letting me do this? Oh, did I not do new body on this? I did do new body. Oh, maybe I gotta get rid of the sketch. Okay, this looks crazy. a lot of the excitement for me about this is just the fact that I haven't seen this yet, but like I'm not. None of this is technically new. It's just a lot of combining different industries together, and so it feels so fresh. Um, brass. Oh yeah, let's get some brass on this. Okay, so this is first concept of the strike plate. So what'll be really cool about this is with these dual nozzle 3D printers, I can fuse flexible material with rigid material. So the plan will be to print the body of this out in rigid material that will do the vibrating, but then I can put a strike plate where I'm going to be hitting it with the beater and make that um, like a softer thing that I can hit to reduce that transient and focus the energy into more of a low frequency thing. So would changing the shape of the tongue or body affect it much? Yeah, so I think changing the shape is going to make a huge difference, but that's also, so this little yellow thing, this is going to be a brass counterweight. So you'll be able to move it up and down. I think ultimately speaking, any tongue shape I make will kind of vibrate in the same way. So I can experiment with different shapes of the tongue. I don't think that's going to technically make a huge difference. What's going to make a difference is how thick it is this way, right? Because right now I have it like 5 mils thick. So I might need to make this way more rigid or way more flexible, and I'd do that by changing the thickness of the material plus changing how big this sort of hinging part is. And yeah, I'm sure changing the tongue shape would make a difference. Like if I had it going the other way, if I had the hinge up here and you were hitting it, that would give it a lot more ability to sort of oscillate, not just back and forth, but like this. And so I want to reduce it. I really want to try and focus the oscillation to just be back and forth. And that's why I'm kind of going with more of a upside down, heavier at the top, thinner at the bottom. I think that'll focus that oscillation to just back and forth a little bit better. It allows for a much thicker hinge here, and any sort of rotating oscillation that might happen from like an offset beater or something should kind of focus down into this point. Ideally, I'm not 100% sure. Oh, I actually did mess up here. I need, no, not there. I need to move this guy up because I'm going to need a point where I can connect. So that will drive a rod. Probably a small little rod. That will drive a rod, actually. What I'll do is I'll do new body here so I can actually visualize this rod. That will drive a small little rod into a much larger cone. And so I think we want to go with, I mean, just for the visualization of it, let's go with a 3-inch cone. Nice. It's probably going to be kind of like, let's go like maybe 8 mils. Okay. And then we can fill it this hard to give us that cone shape. And then we can put a shell on this, make it really thin. And then obviously there's going to be some sort of like surround. So actually, I guess this has to be maybe like 2.5 inches. Or no, let's leave it at 3 because I can just make the surround a little bit bigger. Again, this is purely visual at this point. Instead of being attached to the cone, it smacks it like the kick drum beater we were talking about. So you mean instead of it actually being physically attached, the tongue just hits the cone? Is that what you're thinking? That's exactly right. That's exactly what I think would happen, because the problem with a small cone is it doesn't have the weight to oscillate. And so that's the whole point of having this whole tongue that's directly attached to the cone, is the tongue does the job of converting the strike energy into the oscillation. The weight has the momentum that will allow the oscillation to maintain itself and will give it enough energy to push the cone. And then the cone does the job of amplifying it. Yeah, if it wasn't physically attached, it would just be tapping the cone. And so it might end up giving you like a low vibration sound, but it would be a rattling. You would hear, it would be a bunch of little independent little rattling sounds, which I want to avoid any rattling. Okay, so let's do a sketch. I want to construct an axis, and then, oh, no, not a plane at an angle. Nice. Sketch. What, do you do any 3D modeling? I'm just gonna eyeball this. Actually, let's make it look a little more organic. So it's just easier on the eyes. Yeah, I hear you. Um, I don't remember if I started modeling first or if I started 3D printing first. I know, I think what ended up well, I did like drafting and stuff in school. So I was kind of familiar with modeling things on a computer, but it wasn't 3D. Um, print plate drying rack. Oh, nice. What software did you use to do that? What? Oh my gosh, lame. That was wrong. Why did I do that? There we go. What? Nope. Here we are. Let's make that red too. Yeah, Onshape's awesome. I probably would be using Onshape myself if I didn't spend so much time in Fusion 360 already. And the only reason I'm using Fusion 360 over Onshape is I have a CNC machine, and Fusion 360 has CAM software, so I can control my CNC machine through Fusion 360. I haven't used my CNC machine in years. It's literally just collecting dust. The last time I used it was for my cat litter sieve video, which I did a couple of years ago. Um, but Onshape is awesome, and I think it's like just as powerful. I think you could do pretty much everything other than the cam stuff on Onshape as Fusion 360, and I highly recommend it. Fusion is it's not that expensive to an extent. I actually don't even understand how to pay for Fusion because I paid for it for like a 3-year license, and now it's like I don't know how long it's been, and I hope when that runs out, it's not going to force me to pay for the full version. If it does, I'll probably switch to Onshape because I think it's like thousands of dollars, and ain't nobody got time for that. So this is sort of the first part here. And then the actual body of the drum will consist of like a crazy cone. And so what I think I'm going to do is, oh, let's turn this on. Let's construct another plane here, but we're going to turn it sideways. And then basically, I'm just going to like really just start eyeballing this because I don't know. This is purely visual representation. Project that. So I kind of have to like plan this out. I think it'll probably go like something like this. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to use a spline for this. I'm going to go like this. Come forward. Maybe like that. What am I doing here? No, this is right. Come forward like that. I need to project this so I can go like this. Thing is, it's got to grow. It's going to have to grow. I can worry about the growth after. How do I do this so it actually comes out? Maybe I could just go like this. Have it coming out the top? I don't know. Yeah. Totally eyeballing this. I have no idea what I'm doing. Tangent arc. I guess we can have it kind of switch back a little bit. I don't know if that's going to work. Finish sketch. And then, oh, you know what I should have done? I should have gone with this. Finish sketch. And then I want to construct. I think so. Yeah, like this. I think it's going to be about this big, maybe a little bit bigger. Because that one I did it conservatively small. Okay, I don't really know how I'm going to do this other than just going like this. And sketching on here. Like this. Literally just like, so how big is that? What is that? That's 3 inches, so I need this. If I go 2 inches, that'll, oh, we can go, let's, oops. Why are you lagging? Why are you lagging? Let's do that, so it comes up to a 6-inch cone, I guess. Finish. This is a really roundabout way to be doing this. I don't know why I'm actually doing it this way. Let's come down. Oh, that's not going to work, is it? Okay, so I actually have to do it on this surface. I should have done that. And then if I sketch, oh, annoying. Okay, construct. Oh no, 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 no. I can sketch on this plane a circle that is, let's just say that big. Boom, boom, boom. Hide this body. sketch. Give me this body, yes. And then I can loft this bad boy. Maybe. Is it going to loft properly? Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was really cool to get to explain this stuff. Try to figure out how I can explain this. So I really appreciate you being here and being such a good listener and hanging out. It was a lot of fun. I'll be back on Friday, right? It's Wednesday today. Yeah, I'll be back on Friday. So hopefully you can make it, but I'll try and stick to that schedule. Appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, my back. I should probably wrap up too. I just wanted to really make this look good first. That's not going to work, is it? What if I did a sweep? Awesome. Well, you take it easy. Have a good night. Okay, that just looks ridiculous, doesn't it? That looks pretty dumb. That could look cool. And then I need a frame that all of that sits around. I'll have to figure this out. But that is the concept. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for watching. I will be back on Friday. And hopefully I'll have more of this figured out by then. And same with the piano situation. I'm feeling good about the piano thing. I think the piano thing's really cool, actually. I'm just worried about time. Time is the concern. So hopefully I can hustle and get these things done. Because on top of these two, I have another video that I've been dabbling on that I have to finish, and it's not close yet. But I'm going to do all three at the same time, I think. Anyways, appreciate it. Thank you, and you take it easy. Bye.